Okay, so one thing you might not know about me is that I'm a pretty huge coffee fan. I'm a lover of craft breweries and great cocktail spots. And in Minneapolis, we're kind of littered with great places to enjoy all of those things. But every so often, I'll get a tip from a good friend, or I'll come across something on Instagram, just kind of scrolling, and I'll see or hear about a new spot that I need to go check out. Sometimes these places are under the radar. Maybe they're brand new and just kind of opening and getting off the ground, or maybe they're just in a spot that is harder to get to or a little more obscure. But I'll go and I'll enjoy the drink and the atmosphere and the ambiance and kind of come away with this feeling like, how did I not know about this place sooner? How is this kind of the best kept secret in town? And as I've been thinking about this guitar, I'm going to highlight for you today, it's kind of evoking a really similar feeling. This one of being pleasantly surprised by something that I hadn't really known of or heard about until recently, and being really glad that I was able to check it out. We're going to talk today about this guitar. It is the REVO Colt HH. It's from a company called Vintage Guitars. This is a company that, as its name suggests, kind of have a number of offerings that are reminiscent of some vintage classic shapes and styles. This one is kind of a unique deep cut from the Fender style catalog. It reminds me of a Mustang from their pawn shop collection from years back, and it has some really similar attributes with some cool features and modifications that we'll talk about here. But I've just been really pleasantly surprised with this guitar overall, and I think it's kind of a best kept secret in that budget friendly range of guitars. So let's talk through some of the specs and attributes of this guitar, and then hear some sounds from it before we kind of give some opinions and closing thoughts. First off, you have an Okume body in a sort of a sonic blue finish. They have a couple other finishes of this specific guitar, a really nice forest green and a black that I think were just great selections for this specific model. You have a maple neck and fretboard here, a 24 3/4 inch scale length, so you get that shorter scale feel when you're playing up and down the fretboard. The neck feels like a pretty comfortable C shape. It's not overly chunky. I wouldn't call it flat either, and so it's a pretty familiar kind of feeling neck if you've played any of the Fender guitars. And then throughout this guitar, you have Wilkinson hardware, including the vintage style tuners up top here. As you can see, you have this kind of chopped ashtray style Wilkinson bridge here with 3 compensated brass saddles, and it really gives the guitar some cool kind of feel and texture as you're playing it. The resonance and the kind of response from those saddles is unique. It gives the guitar a little bit of a different voice and kind of feel and response than some of those vintage Mustang style guitars would with their original bridges. Beyond that, you have 2 humbucker style pickups designed by Alan Entwistle, who has some notoriety over in the UK as a pickup designer. This guitar as a whole was designed in collaboration with Alan Entwistle, and these pickups specifically come from his lineup. They don't quite feel like wide range humbuckers, but they also don't feel quite like a traditional humbucker, so maybe somewhere in between there. Pairing humbucker style pickups with that kind of Mustang style body gives a more full, rich sound and texture to this guitar, again, than you'd experience from a vintage Mustang or similar, with those generally thinner sounding single coils. But then what you also have with this guitar and the electronics is a bass cut switch here at the bottom, where you can engage that and really kind of shave off some of the low end to give you slightly more single coil type sounding textures, and really give you a bit of versatility with this guitar and these pickups. Above that, you have switches here to engage or disengage individual pickups, so you can engage the neck, engage both neck and bridge, or just bridge there. And then you've got a master volume and master tone down here. The fit and finish of this guitar is really nice. The fret dressing feels really good up and down the neck. Visually and aesthetically, it looks great. And you can also get this model in a couple other pickup combinations and tremolo configurations too. And we're kind of leading to the crescendo here of the price tag. This guitar lists for $449 new, and I think at that price point, it really does rival a lot of the kind of higher end Squire guitars that I've played, and is a pretty competitive and impressive guitar in that price category for someone that's wanting a unique, kind of interesting take on a vintage style guitar with some nice modifications and upgrades in terms of the hardware the pickup selection, and that the playability has been really great. The neck feels really nice and smooth, and like I said, it's a fun guitar to play. It kind of is one of those instruments that put me in a certain kind of headspace when I was writing that intro track, and kind of had me leaning in fun directions to create some cool sounds and combinations, pairing it with some of those effects that you heard, some chorus and some reverb and delay in the intro sketch, and just kind of seeing what all I could do, seeing how you can kind of play with and to those barrel saddles in the bridge to kind of get that twang and that resonance, almost like you'd hear from a telly, is a really cool feature of this guitar. And so we're going to kind of jump into some sound samples and let you hear and experience some of the different tones and textures from this REVO Colt HH. We're going to be running it through some different effects at times. I've got a small pedal board including Horothia Effects Type 1 analog chorus. We've got a Strymon Brigadier and Strymon Flint for delay and reverb, and then running that onto a Supro Airwave for our amplifier, going direct with their 2-Notes technology. Thanks again for watching. Do hit subscribe below if you're new to the channel here and just catching this video, so you can stay up to date on all the future videos and reviews we've got on the channel. And please drop a note, a comment, or a question below if you've got them about this guitar or anything else you've seen on the channel. Let's check out some sounds.